Our journey begins. It is day 121, September 29, 2024. And this is pretty much recorded directly after the first iteration of going through some of the sort of general world catalog inventory of languages and trying to get an understanding of all of those and how they're working so that I don't completely go out of bounds here while I'm creating a new language. But I will admit, not exactly my cup of tea. It's kind of boring to go through and just sort of learn stuff. But there's probably more exciting ways to do this. Whereas I could have spent that hour like actually figuring out like, is SVO or VSO or VOS or whatever like fundamentally better for cognition in terms of language. But really, I'm not even going to have language. Actually, I pretty much finished all of the components of the language that I want to have. There's a couple that I'm going to need to go back to and think about more. So I'll kind of give you an overview of what I actually worked on recently. Can I look at this as a day view? Yeah, there we go. So I was looking into linguistics, and I was looking into how the language of heptapod B works in the movie Arrival. Super fascinating. Apparently, it's a little bit more artistic than, say, actually linguistic in nature, but still like super interesting. And I was doing some more research on how exactly the eye processes information, trying to get through to what sort of patterns and symbology you would need to create to really be something that the mind and eye are capable of quickly perceiving. Then I did a lot of research into quite a few new language components, including symbology, and continuing to develop all of the various components of the language inventory that I wanted to review. I'd say the discussion on the symbology was super interesting. Then I was doing some research into if human nature is determined or not, because obviously that affects a lot whether or not, like, if I want to help enable humanity to evolve into something better, I think that it's certainly possible. I think saying that we're determined by our genes or whatnot, it isn't gonna get us that far. Like, you kind of have to, even if there's evidence for that, you can't know anything to be for certain, and so why depend on that? And even if that is the case, well, how do you? Why do some people still end up differently? And can you overcome a large part of nature via nurture? Um, and then I was doing a lot of preparation for creating this sort of setup so that I could go through, because I wanted to go through the whole language inventory and sort of share the developments at the same time. So let me just show you what I have so far. So these are all the different components of the new language. And in some of these, I have like deep methodologies and thinking and yeah, let me go into one. So this is basically, I said C lexicon here because my lexicon takes into account how root words are handled. But this is essentially the framework I was using, where I would get a template breakdown, which is where GPT would do this breakdown, going over, okay, what would be the objective of trying to add this into the religion and into the language, and what would be the purpose, and how would the language, like, why would we want to include it, and how would the language work if this were to be included? And then the core requirements of what would have to happen for this objective to have been met. Then the methodology of, okay, how do we actually achieve that? Some of the challenges that are going to take place. How are we going to integrate that across all the other components? How is this component going to be able to evolve with all the other components? And then a specific example of what's actually happening. So, yeah, and I've been talking to you guys about a lot of these. The ones that I was doing yesterday, Um, I think started around here in terms of pattern recognition. How can your brain perceive patterns in the language and really delving into that? Context based, like art communication. How does our brain actually perceive art? And can you combine this aspect of being able to just look at a piece of art sort of non linearly and be able to understand a lot of what's going on and still get the detail that you need with language? So it's pretty interesting. Um, then I got like VR readable, which goes down a lot into simply the symbology. Um, but basically, like a lot of VR is going to work off of you, the text or whatever, manipulating itself so that you can see it in your orientation. Whereas potentially using certain symbols, it would not matter how the symbols are oriented or in what order they are. Maybe you'd have to do a little bit of aligning yourself, but there would be a wide angle that you would be able to still read and understand what's going on. So then I was delving into the organization structure. How and what options do we have for the organization structure of the language? And this is such obviously a huge core component of how this is going to work. Then I get into aesthetic and artistic qualities. So I'd be like, okay, how are the symbols or how are the things going to be aesthetic? And then we got into machine readability. And I think I just put C lexicon and structure for that. Decentralized. And at first it thought, okay, like how can we make the language itself decentralized? But I'm not sure. Obviously, it will be decentralized in one sense, in that people will be able to create their own words for certain things and then add that to a vocabulary of things and perhaps, yeah, like there's not going to be overlapping words. Like if you need a new word, you just invent it. It goes into the one and only source of truth vocabulary, which everyone has access to. But there's still going to be like people can't just change what a word is for a term or whatever. So in that sense, it's not decentralized. There's a central form of authority for that. Although I do think like we'll still have the ability to like change things. If obviously this doesn't make sense, then let's do something else. But what I really was going to get at is like making the language interpretable by blockchain via the nature of it not being ambiguous. So if you know much about blockchain, you know that you have to write the smart contract very thoroughly, and that's where a lot of the problems arise. If it's not quite thorough enough, if there's loopholes you can get through, then you're sort of defeating the whole purpose. Then I didn't get into these two too much, but yeah, I spent a lot of time going through the symbology. So I'm going through geometric structures, I think using 3D geometric structures and utilizing patterns, color, and texture along with that, as well as combining via tendrils or simply creating a combined uh, geometric shape, as well as potentially solid or hollow shapes. Because in that case, it would not matter which way you're looking at it. You would still be able to understand what is being said. So yeah, this is obviously more exciting to me than working through the new language inventory, although that's definitely an important part. So yeah, this is the new language inventory. These are all the things that I was trying to get a hold of, and then creating the detailed language analysis, which I started going through. Um, Ended here. I don't know. Maybe I'll add a column for completed. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow.